Metake Oyase. Blessings, greetings to you, each and every one of you, on this sacred day. We, as the people of the earth, know we pray to the four grandfathers, the Great Spirit and Mother Earth. And so we are a living spirit, and we call everything Wakantanka. Wakantanka is Great Spirit. We ask the Great Spirit to guide us in the morning with a good mind, that this day would be good. The ancient elders remind us that we call it the Ojimaka. Grandmother Earth is a living spirit. And the old ones remind us that we are part of this living environment. For all things have a nagi. All things have a spirit. All the trees, the animals. That's why we say Mitakie Oyase, to recognize and pray for all the living spirit, the four-legged, the winged ones, those ones that swim and crawl. And lastly, we pray for ourselves, because it's a way of life. And we know that today we are faced with global challenges in our homelands. No more fresh water. A lot of our foods. The elders remind us that we have our traditional medicine and our traditional foods. That's what we speak about, the mind, the body, and spirit. But all these trees have feelings. When they hurt, we hurt. When we hurt, they hurt. The Manewichwani is a living spirit. So we always ask the women to pray for they are the guardians of the sacred life. They take care of our children, the family, and the environment, the water. They take care of, they are the backbone of our nation. But in this Changleshka Waka, the sacred hoop, there's no one person higher than the other. There's no one nation higher than the other. If all of our people go back to the sacred teachings, that's about love and compassion. So that's the way we must return to our sacred sites and respect our sacred sites, because these are the times more urgent than ever, when we need to pray for peace and harmony. We need to go back to our sacred sites and relit our sacred fires. Bring that, ask the Spirit to help us, because we are in turmoil, global disasters. We don't want to see the hurt, the pain of our brothers and sisters, the nations upon Mother Earth. we should all live in peace and harmony, that our children in our homes should be in a good place, no bad feelings, no anger, because we as the people that maintain a sacred way of life, we must stand up, help each other as nations, help our brothers and sisters, help the environment, for this is life, a sacred life that we must look forward to, that we must have that faith and belief. Don't doubt yourself. Through prayer, all nations, all faiths, one prayer, and we shall succeed. Aho, Mitakuasi. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Arvol. Our next presenter is going to be presenting via Zoom. Her name is Carol Woolman. She's a psychiatrist, a peace activist, and filmmaker. Her film is a retrospective for peace through video activism with Love Your Neighbor, concurrent to World Peace and Prayer Day.
The sailors dance in the amphitheater, where the stardust glimmers upon the floor, and the shutters are banging against the windows, and outside the rains begin to pour. The wandering Romans, displaced Jews, Arabs in Gaza, blood on the windows, blood on the floor. Outside the rains are beginning to pour.
Radiation attacks DNA.
DNA is what we have in common. DNA is sacred.
Radioactive nuclear waste can travel far. It can travel fast. If the plant blows up, it will be 10 times larger than Chernobyl.
Now, the Russians fired shells at the big complex in southern Ukraine, Zaporizhia, and started a fire in the complex, which caused great alarm. If that plant were to blow up, it would be 10 times worse than Chernobyl. The International Atomic Energy Agency went on high alert. The next day, the Russians actually took control of the Zaporizhia complex. This contravenes one of the 7 indispensable pillars of nuclear safety and security. The plant operators have to be able to make decisions without undue pressure. Radiation attacks DNA. Sometimes they have to make decisions rather quickly. The Russians have shut down mobile phone networks and the internet connections coming from the plant. In other words, if there is a leak, there's no way for the operators to let people know. They're not allowing them to change shifts at times. Also, it's still a war zone. Operators of nuclear plants are under a lot of pressure anyway, because what they're doing can so easily go out of control as it did in Chernobyl. That was due to a technician error. If you look at a map, you can see that Russia is surrounded by some of the countries that used to belong to the Soviet Union, and now some of them are in NATO. Ukraine is the biggest by far. It's not in NATO. This whole thing was precipitated because it wants to join NATO. And the larger problem has to do with the overall sense of security that these countries need to have. Radiation attacks DNA. Radiation attacks DNA. So a solution that would help everybody is to declare all of the countries around Russia nuclear free. So a very crucial factor when there's a nuclear accident is the wind, because the nuclear particles go into the air and the wind blows them across Europe, down to Africa, toward Russia. Of all the hazards that are facing us right now, global warming and flooding and fires and all the rest of it, nuclear is the most dangerous. The reason I say that is that it attacks DNA. It attacks DNA. Radiation attacks DNA.
I'm running for Congress. I'm Carol Woolman, and I'm running as an independent, nonpartisan write-in candidate for November 2006.
I'm Dr. Carol Woolman, and I'm talking on March 6th, 2022. It's the 11th day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So I'd like to think of myself as a peacemaker. I've always worked for peace. And in my view, peacemakers should not be taking sides in a conflict.
We have the firepower to wipe out every Russian city, but why doesn't somebody in the administration call Putin's bluff? He's bluffing.
The goal of a peacemaker is to make peace. Not to say this guy's right and that guy's wrong, that just polarizes the situation further, and that's what most of the discussions have been about. My concern, however, is about Russian control of these reactors. They took control of Chernobyl rather quickly. They kicked up a lot of radioactive dust in the battle. They say that the radiation levels from the plant itself have not changed. There's really no way to verify that. So what needs to happen, I believe, the United Nations international peacekeeping forces go into Ukraine and take care of those reactors. Really, it is a call to get rid of all of the nuclear reactors. They're not safe. They are potential bombs. What it would take, really, to knock out a nuclear reactor is a loss of power. They have generators that can last maybe 2 weeks, and then after that, it's a meltdown. That's what happened at Fukushima. It was a loss of power because of the flooding. We're dealing now in a planet with rising seawater, rising water in the lakes. All of the reactors have to be situated near bodies of water, or most of them anyway, so that they can have cooling coming in all the time. And then, of course, there's the waste problem, and there's nothing to do with nuclear waste. And it stays in the environment for thousands, millions of years, some of it. Some of the isotopes stick around for millions of years. It doesn't go away. It doesn't dissipate. It's there, and it's going to be affecting all life for generations and generations to come. Anybody that you know who might have some influence, ask them to bring up the subject of United Nations peacekeeping forces protecting and safeguarding the nuclear reactors in Ukraine.
I think it was started from Nevada. Medicine man, they had down there, he had a dream. In that dream, he seen his dead people come back to life in a ghost dance.
The prophet told him that he spoke to the stars. He said the earth will roll over the white man. All the dead Indians would come back to life. But I never believed it.
It's December 16, 1890. A bitter foe of the whites, Sitting Bull, was the most unrelenting, the most sagacious, the most cruel chief of modern times.
What have we done that the white people want us to stop? We have been running up and down the country, but they follow us.
New York Times. Bigfoot has eluded Colonel Sumner and the 8th Cavalry. They mounted their horses in hot haste. Major Whiteside and the 7th Cavalry will leave today in pursuit.
The guards around Bigfoot were changed very often. The fast-shooting cannon, the Hotchkiss gun, was put in the hill and pointed at the camp. And someone cried out, "Etchishneo, okute meshneo." Stop!
Bigfoot was the first one. He was the first one to go, and he's sick.
Within an incredibly short time came first reports of the slaughter at Wounded Knee. We were told that we were at the mercy of a maddened horde of Indians.
Nobody asked you to make this vow to ride, and it's going to be a hard ride. I have the job of telling you the purpose of this ride. The purpose of this ride is to bring the survivors of Chief Bigfoot out of mourning in 1990.
Well, it feels good. Like, you feel like, you know, if you can do this, you can do anything. It's a spiritual ride, and it has to come from your heart when you ride, so. And just remembering what happened 100 years ago, so.
If a man loses anything and goes back to look for it carefully, he will find it. I am Sitting Bull. I want to travel along the trail my people, the Hunkpapa, took after I was murdered at my home on the Grand River. I want to go back along that trail and look carefully to see what it was that was lost.
Our next presenter is going to be Lazaro Aguero. He is going to speak on behalf of the Peruvian people regarding the genocide of the indigenous people of Peru. So I'd like to present Lazaro.
Thank you so much. Can you put the slides, please? Some slides. Ayillanchucashanqui Noca. Bienvenidos todos. You are welcome to this event, to this ceremony. My name is Lázaro Agüero. I am from this confederation. You see over there, Tahuantinsuyo. You see behind the word Tahuantinsuyo, there is Machu Picchu. You know this mountain. It's in Cusco, Peru. This was the capital of the Incas Confederation, and we are a member of this confederation. Next slide, please. This is our logo of our organization. This is Pueblos Indígenas, Quechuas y Aymaras en Estados Unidos. Indigenous people, Quechuas and Aymaras in the USA. And this was made by one of our kids when we start doing and creating this organization last year. One of the kids designed this logo, and that's why we decided to keep this logo with all the kids, because the reason we are here is that we have to teach our kids our culture, and the reason we are keep on fighting here against the human rights violations, against any violation to our indigenous people is because of them, the kids. That's the reason that we are here. Next slide, please. The Confederation of Tahuantinsuyo is this. You can see the map. Goes all the way from Colombia, Ecuador, goes to Peru, Chile, goes to Bolivia, Argentina, and part of Brazil. This was, and this is, and this will be our confederation. Our people, indigenous people, lives over here, and we are part of this confederation. We are dedicated as a confederation, as a Quechua people, we are dedicated to preserve our culture and to teach our kids our culture, to maintain our culture and our traditions. Our heritage teaches us to be people of this world. We have to be honest. We have to have principles. Since those days, we only have 3 rules. In this confederation, we only had 3 rules. Amasua, Amakeya, and Amaluya. Not to steal, not to be lazy, and not to be a liar. Those 3 rules. But right now we have thousands of rules. And in any constitution, in any country, we have thousands of rules. In our time, we were ruled by those 3 rules: Amaluya, Amakeya, and Ambasua. Next, please. Next slide. The reason we are here is to let you know what's happening in Peru. What is happening in Peru? The indigenous people like us is in danger. last year, on December of 2022, the President Castillo was arrested. He was the first president, indigenous president in the last century, the first one. And he was defending the motherland. He was defending the poor people. He was defending the indigenous people. He was in power only 1 year, less than 1 year, and he was arrested. Since he was arrested, the people from the Andes, from the main cities, start going to the streets to protest. Thousands and thousands of people were protesting. But what the president, the so-called president, the new president did, she started sending the police and the army to kill the protesters. All of them indigenous, from Cusco, Puno, Juliaca, all in cities where the indigenous people lives. On December, we counted 47 people that had been killed by bullets. On December, we counted 47 people. By January of 2023, this year, a few months ago, the president couldn't stop the protesters. The people were on the streets. Everybody was going to the capital, Lima. Lima is the capital of Peru. And what happened? It wasn't enough for her, for the new president, and she sent the army. No the police, regular police, no, the army. The army that is supposed to defend any country against any war, that army. And until now, you will see on some videos how terrifying was those days, where she sent helicopters to shoot the people, the protesters. And until now, we have close to 80 assassinated, 80 killed brothers and sisters, all indigenous, kids, young kids, like many of the ones that are here. Elderly people, like 80, 85 years old. The government didn't have mercy. They sent the army and start shooting. So right now, there used to be like 2,000 injured people with bullets. So what's happening in Peru, it's a genocide. It's not like the government is trying to prevent a protest. No. It's a genocide. And the regular press is not talking about it anymore. They don't say anything. They are saying that Peru is in normal conditions. We have peace over there. The violence is gone, but it's a lie. Every day, the people keep on protesting in Peru, and up to now. On July 19, there is going to be a new big march in all the country, that from all the cities are going to go to the capital to create pressure, because the people doesn't like this government, this is worse than a dictatorship, what's going on in Peru. Next slide, please. We're going to show you a video. Can you please play this video? And you will see what's going on in Peru. No, the previous one, that one, please. Looks like we have something. Okay. It used to be a bit where you can see snipers. The government sent snipers to the buildings. And one of the third things that we have is that maybe some of us are Catholics, but the Catholic Church from Puno, one of the cities where a lot of people died or was killed, the Catholic Church let the sniper goes on the towers where they put the bells, to ring the bells. Those snipers were over there on the bells. and they were shooting from there. So this was not it's something that you don't decide that to anybody in the world, to any people. You don't want that to happen in any country in the world. Our people was protesting peacefully with our flags. That what you see over there, the rainbow flag, it's the flag of our confederation. This flag is used like 2,000 years ago, and our people keep on using this flag. The next flag that you can see here, that red and white, is the Peruvian flag, the actual Peruvian flag. And the people in Peru was protesting peacefully. And what happened? What the police did? The police, the government, I don't know if you can play your video. Okay, you can see there the sniper on the buildings. It's something like you don't see on a regular protest. Suddenly the Catholic Church was part of it. There are videos where you can see there are hundreds of people. This is what I'm talking about. She said the government sent helicopters and they were shooting from the helicopters. They were using AKM machine guns. They were not using just gases. They were using AKM machine guns. That's why there are close to 80 people that have been assassinated, and not only that, close to 2,000 people injured. And the people was protesting peacefully on the streets, like in any country. In this country, in any country, the people protest and it's on the streets, everything. But the government, instead of trying to talk to the people, to get a resolution or something like that, they create the violence. They were the ones that create the violence. Over here, there is a group of police that got a meeting of indigenous people, and the police was threatening them. If they go out to the marches, they will be arrested and charged criminal. They will have criminal charges. So to that point, that the police go to where the people was meeting, if the police come to this place and says, oh, if you go to march, you will be charged with as a criminal. And this happened everywhere. They were trying to prevent that the people go to the streets. Because all the people were going from all the cities, the Andean cities, to the capital, that is Lima. They not only injured the people that were protesting, they injured, we have an alternative media, that is the YouTubers, the people that has a cellular, and they are filming on the streets, and they put a video on Facebook, Instagram, and they were targeting those brothers. Whoever was, basically, whoever was protesting or filming what's happening in Peru, those guys were arrested. So please, I just go 1 minute? Okay. Right now, we are protesting because there is no justice in Peru. So far, in Peru, there are like 80 people that have been assassinated. You can see over here on the pictures, like these were assassinated on December last year, close to 50. We thought that was not going to be anymore. But we're looking for justice because the system over there are not doing anything. The justice system. There is no one that has been arrested, even though there are videos. Okay, in this slide, let me show you this slide. What we are doing as an organization, what we are doing over here, we are protesting. We are in front of the City Hall in Los Angeles, protesting. There was a International Labor Day on May 1st, and we were protesting over there too. Next slide, please. Over here, we went to the front of CNN, to the building of CNN to protest because they were not saying the truth. And we keep on, wherever we can go, we have the chance to go, we go to speak up. Next slide, please. Over here, we went to the Commission, Inter-American Commission of Human Rights, and we went to their meetings and speak up. We didn't have permission to talk, but we went and speak up and tell them what was happening. And that's why we get those videos and we put it on the internet so that people in Peru knows that they are not alone, that there are people around the world that are supporting them. We are in solidarity with their deaths, with our deaths. Over here we have a letter that through the press that we were doing, we were talking to some Congress members, and they wrote a letter asking the President Biden to not to sell weapons to the Peruvian government. Next slide, please. This letter was signed by close to 20 Congress members. One of them was Alejandro Ocasio. Maybe some of them you know her. And she signed this petition to stop the selling of weapons to the Peruvian government. Next slide, please. What we are asking you? We are asking you to join us, to spread the word, by any means, through Facebook, internet, YouTube, anything. And protest and tell the government of Peru to stop the assassination of our people, to stop the killing of our people. Yeah. Over here we have a QR code. If you have any questions, anything like that, please. If you have any questions, you can send us a message. If you have any ideas, please go to this code and you can, anything that you can give us, any idea how we can spread the word so more people knows what's going on in Peru. Right now, please, on this one, I want to finish up with this. There are bad memories in us. As indigenous people, I am going to finish up with this. There is one moment that I cannot remove that picture from my mind. There was a group of people, they were taking one of the fathers that was assassinated, they were taken to the cemetery. They were carrying the box to the cemetery. And the little girl was saying, "Father, don't leave me. Father, don't leave me," crying. A little girl. So with this massacre, a lot of families lost their brothers, their sisters, their mothers, their relatives. No one deserves what's happening in Peru. No one. If we don't speak up, this may happen in any other country. We don't want that to happen. Please keep us on our prayer. Speak up about what's happening in Peru. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lazario. Our next broadcaster, or not broadcaster, speaker, is the executive director for AIM and also a chairperson for the Grand Governing Council for AIM. Her name is Lisa Bellinger. She's in Anishinaabe in Dakota, from the Dakota Nation, and she's here to talk about the womb place of the sacred stone, from spiritual significance to boarding school horrors to oil threat, the fight to protect the sacred stone. Lisa Bellinger.
Don't you just love her? I'm a proud auntie here. So, Buju, Bijuains, Minawa, Wagamuha, Wakawi, Indigo, Wabajashi, and Dodim. Kasaga Squad, Jimmy Cog, and Donjaba, Minawaga, Kabi Kong, and Dainda Nungum, Gagige, Nishnabe, Medewana Kwe, Minawaga Chirakwe, and Dao. So I greet you from my language with my original names, Young Links Woman and Sacred Gourd Woman. I come from the Leech Lake Nation. in northern Minnesota, and I currently live in the Twin Cities, born and raised within the American Indian movement, and I'm a member of our traditional Medewan Medicine Society, and also with the Sundance Society as well. Within my lodge, I'm part of the Ogichida, the Warrior Society, and the Women's Water Society, in which our responsibilities are to care for those beautiful waters, to pray for those waters, to protect the waters, to share the waters, and to ensure these teachings of the beautiful teachings of that life-giving medicine flow into the future through our water lines, which goes from grandmother to daughter to granddaughter. And that's how the knowledge flows forward. So I could talk about many things, Paula said, but what we've been working on here with Pipestone, Minnesota, Pipestone, I just thought, I was like, it's like the womb of where the sacred stone comes from. It's where they harvest that stone and have been harvesting the stone that is used for our sacred pipes, for our chinupas, opwagan, whatever your word is for that, comes from this place on Mother Earth in southwestern Minnesota. And it's not just that one little spot either. Remember that's colonized borders, but it extends in that area. There are other places that there is pipestone as well that people do harvest, but this is the only place that has this grade, a certain grade and composition of pipestone that is found here on Turtle Island. Next slide. So for those of you perhaps out there in internet land, Zoom land, pipestone, again, is that sacred stone that's used for ceremonial purposes. It's, like I said, it's the only place that you can get it really on Turtle Island, this particular quality of stone. Next slide. And you can see here there's Wisconsin, Ohio, Arizona, South Dakota, Kansas, and Montana where they have other areas of the stone. But this particular grade at Pipestone, Minnesota is what we're talking about today. Next slide. So pipestone has been harvested by our people for many, many years. Many tribes, and there are tribes that have treaty rights to this area for the pipestone, but it is being harvested by indigenous people from all over Turtle Island. There's a process that you sign up to quarry the stone to be able to harvest it, and it's protected as a national park at this time. So what you see up there is the land of where the pipestone is. And in 1893, the Department of Interior was on their boarding school kick, and they established the Pipestone Boarding School. And with that establishment, it created an area which the local people called the reservation. It's not typically a reservation, but that's what it was named by local people, and they even have a street called Reservation Road. So right here on the lands, kind of up by, you see the red dots on the far right, that's where the boarding school was. My grandmother attended that school, my uncle, several uncles, great aunts attended that school. Next slide. And so that boarding school ran for, I can't remember how many years, well, 1959. And this is the one of two buildings that are left. This is the superintendent's house. And it's still standing there on the ground, and we've held ceremony there. And we'll get back to the boarding school. So next slide. So then in 1937, they established it as in Pipestone National Park and included the land of the boarding school and has federal protection under the park. And so every year for, I want to say, over almost 40 years, American Indian Movement has been having a Sundance there on the grounds. And then also there's continuing quarrying by families. And so there's just a photo of that. Next slide. Well, one day, a little birdie told me that do you know there's an oil pipeline here? And I said, what? And they said, yeah, it runs right across the park. So as you can see in the photo, the top left, where the trees are, is where there's active quarries. People quarry those and maybe quarrying today. On the right is, we had a gathering there, so there was some of the teepees are up. But you can see the pipes, the oil line marker, and how close that is to the quarries, right? And so the pipeline, they said, yeah, there's the pipeline here. And we're like, what? So then it's like, how do you stop a pipeline? And the local people were talking, and they said, you know, because they're just finding out about this pipeline, Magellan Oil. And they said the way that where the slope of the land where the pipeline goes to where the quarries are is at an angle, right? There's a slope there. And the way that pipestone is comprised of a protective layer above it, the layer of stone that we use for our chanupa, above it and below it is a protective layer. And when that oil pipeline spills, it's gonna seep through the ground, right? And it's gonna hit that protective layer, which will absorb it up and impact the stone and possibly, you know, destroy that beautiful life-giving stone. Next slide. So, you know, as protectors, we start, what do we do to say, how do we get rid of this pipeline? What do we do? What can we, you know, researching species, aquatics, anything that we can, vegetation that might be threatened or endangered, or what are those elements that we can use as our ammunition to stop this pipeline? So this is the history of the pipeline, the boarding school. The park opened 1947. Great Lakes Oil applies for the right-of-way for it. And at that point, it was still under the superintendent, so the superintendent of the school granted a right-of-way. And then in 1957, the land transferred from boarding school or Department of Education to Department of Interior Parks, and it became Pipestone National Park. In 1967, that right-of-way expired. And there has been no right-of-way or any other approval since that time. So this oil company has been allowed to run oil and threaten our sacred stone for all these years. 2021, the companies, there must be something an issue, right? Because all of a sudden they're back at it trying to get another right-of-way because they can't get in there. One thing about it being national parks is that on that map, the area that it crosses over national park boundary, they are required to have an act of Congress to approve that right away. Then the adjoining property is Fish and Wildlife. The area director can sign off on that right away, just like that. And that's a copy of the approval, the original right away. Next slide. So we're still researching how to get rid of this pipeline. Slide. There, yeah, there's the approval slide. Magellan, of course, is telling the whole county, goes to the city hall, the county commissioner meeting, and talks about what a wonderful company they are, and we don't have to go over every single point here, but we all know that these oil pipelines, they never have accidents or spills, do they? Now, don't worry, you know, we have the greatest record, but this is their record. Slide. $16 million settlements, that's just a tiny drop in the bucket. So we're still researching. Slide. I need a clicker. Back to the boarding school. So we're researching an archaeological report that was submitted to the Department of Interior back in the 50s, I believe. And in this archaeological report, in the footnotes, not in the report, but it's in the notes in the back of the paper, there is some articles in reference to an Indian cemetery on the grounds. And slide. That's next to the boarding school, right next to the superintendent's house. That's so spooky. I just had to show you. Slide. In those notes are the names of these 4 little girls who are buried there on that land, but nobody knows where that cemetery is. Nobody. Mary LaRose, back please. Mabel Campbell, 11 years old. Doesn't say how old Mary is. Annie Tempanatis, 12 years old. And Florence Reisler, 7 years old. One of those little girls was sent home to her homelands, and the other 3 are buried right there in the Indian cemetery. And I quote, Indian cemetery. That's what it's called in the documents, in the notes, in the newspaper clippings. Everywhere we could find reference, it was called the Indian cemetery. Slide. So then all of a sudden it became our mission to find these little girls who are buried on that land. And you know, I said we have a Sundance there. And I remember hearing them children play. You know, and it didn't occur to me until just recently. I'm like, well, that's why we're always hearing kids, because this is the boarding school. So this comes around the time after, as they're starting to find children at these schools across Canada. Slide. So back in the 30s, there was a group, it was like a YCC worker camp, and those workers came and they made this memorial marker for their fellow tribesmen, is how it was put in the paper. And this memorial says Peace Forever on there. It disappeared. Nobody knows where this memorial is. So when we first heard about it, and I asked the park, I asked the superintendent, I asked people in town, nobody knew where this marker is or what happened to it. And so when we were asking about it, we thought, well, maybe it's just a little marker in the ground that they etched on some stone. And out of the blue, I'm researching through our AIM files in the cities at the University of Minnesota, and I come across this picture. And you look at the marker and you say, how did that disappear? Where did it go? But nobody knows, of course. Slide. So after I think it was 1907, they quit burying children in the Indian cemetery and started burying them across the street at this local cemetery. And the picture up there, you see a printout of all the unknown graves at that cemetery. No names on see all those numbers? Those are grave sites, no names. Slide. So wrapping back up, back at the pipeline. So the pipeline was just like all of a sudden decommissioned, and we were all celebrating. And then it was canceled, the decommission, and they said no, they weren't going to decommission it. So like, okay, you know, we'll go full force then. And then all of a sudden we get word it's decommissioned again. So currently, as we stand here today, the pipeline is decommissioned. However, the pipeline company is trying to route around the park, and I don't have a map for that. But they have taken and repaired some areas of the line that are on private property. And according to some local farmers who have, you know, kind of joined us in this fight, they said they're going around to local farmers and they're trying to reroute it. And they just want to reroute it, just go around the building a little bit around the park. But we know that that stone isn't just in that one spot, that it extends out. So the pipeline, even though that area, according to the superintendent, it's decommissioned for good, you know, well, her only her only concern at this point is just within her park boundaries. So to her, yeah, it's decommissioned. It's not going to be running through her area of the park, but as Indigenous people that use that sacred chanupa, they're still threatening our sacred stone. Next. So we're still looking for the graves for these children. We want to build a memorial there. We want to build some kind of a beautiful memorial. These little girls deserve a cemetery. They deserve a marker. They deserve respect in that way. So we're working with the park. We're working with trying to get our tribal nations to join this fight with us to demand. So before I go, one last statement, you know, like in the 30s, the superintendent of the park then requested $101 to build a proper fence of barbed wire around the children's cemetery, and that was denied. So we are going to take that letter and we are going to update it with today's numbers and say we want a memorial. Not only do we want to protect the cemetery, these children, but we also want a place to put up a memorial to honor them and all the other children that went through that school. Next. So miigwech everybody, and thank you for this time. And to reach me, I don't know, are we going to have contact on our page? Contact info of all the speakers? Okay. Fine, Hopi, she knows how to get a hold of me.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa, for your presentation. Our next presenter comes from India. He is the founding editor of Word for Peace. His name is Ghulam Rasul Dalvi. He is emphasizing environmental protection through spiritual ecology, a Sufi perspective of an Indo-Muslim native. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A very beautiful living peace greeting to all of you. Om Shanti, Salam, Shalom, Amen, Vaheguru, Bodhi Swaha, Mini Vichoni, Hu, Amen. And a very beautiful, peaceful Sufi greeting to all of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May peace and divine blessings and infinite grace of the Almighty beloved Creator be showered upon all of you. My beautiful brothers and sisters of Native America, my spiritual relatives of different tribes, different indigenous tribes of America, I'm here as another brother, as your relative, spiritual relative, who comes all the way from his pilgrimage to the holiest site in Islam, holy Mecca, to the Mount Shasta. I come from Mecca to Mount Shasta. So what compels me, what inspires me to come all the way from the holiest site of Mecca from in Saudi Arabia to Mount Shasta in this beautiful native ambience of America? While on one hand, Mecca stands as the most sacred site for all Muslims around the world, especially for the Sufi Muslims. On the other hand, Mount Shasta is so sacrosanct and sacred for the indigenous peoples and for my native spiritual friends and brothers and sisters of America. While Mecca is the first house of worship built by the Prophet Abraham and rebuilt and restructured by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Mount Shasta, according to the Native Americans, is the first house of God, the beloved Creator. So what connects me from Makkah to Mount Shasta, and what inspires me to come to take this spiritual journey all the way from Makkah to Mount Shasta, is the fact that I share deep spiritual ties with my beloved brothers and sisters of Native America, the indigenous tribes of America. And this is also inspired by the fact that I belong to Mother India, another land of so many native cultures, indigenous tribes, native history, heritage, native spiritual consciousness, because I'm also a Himalayan. Peoples of Himalaya have also similar spiritual consciousness, similar native indigenous history, heritage, culture, and consciousness. And more to the point, I'm also inspired by the beautiful universal philosophy of Sufism, which is a gift and product of age-old historical, spiritual, and civilizational ties between Mother India and so many parts of the world, including Central Asia, Middle East, West Asia, Arabia, Persia. Sufism, in one word or in essence, is the voice of unity of existence or unity of the being, called Wahdatul Wajud. And this beautiful, harmonious, inclusive voice of unity of existence or unity of the being got great resonance with the Indian philosophy of Vedanta, which is known as Advaita, non-dualism. So I carry the message of unity of existence and the unity of being from Sufism, and at the same time the message of non-dualism from Indian philosophy of Vedanta. And I carry this message over here in the World Peace and Prayer Day in order to support and strengthen our unity, our fraternity, to support and stand by you for the Mother Earth and for our beautiful cause for living water for all, because I also come here as a young ambassador of Living Peace, which is a great initiative by my beloved friend and spiritual guide, Bridget Van Barren. So you see, this is my journey in short from Makkah to Mount Shasta. Next slide, please. I must tell you the significance, historicity, and sanctity of this holy site, which is called Makkah, which it is stated in the Holy Quran, Awwalu Baytin Wudi'a Linnasi bi Makkah, which means the first house of worship which was built for the people, for mankind, was Makkah. This was built by Abraham and rebuilt by his son Ismail and restructured by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And this is the Makkah where I had my pilgrimage, which is called Hajj. And I did pilgrimage of Umrah, a smaller version of Hajj, which is to worship in this house of Lord. This is the city of Makkah where there was a native tribe called Quraysh. The prophet, Holy Prophet Muhammad, also belonged to an indigenous and native tribe called Quraysh. And this native tribe of Prophet Muhammad was wronged, persecuted, and they were expelled from the holy city of Makkah to migrate to Medina. And the reason why they were persecuted was because they professed faith in the unity of mankind, oneness of mankind, and oneness of the divine. They professed a faith which was different to the mainstream people of Makkah. Therefore, they were persecuted and expelled from the holy city of Makkah to another city which is called Medina, where I also went, and I'll tell you more about that. But why and how I met the spiritual leader of Native Americans, honorable leaders, Chief Arvol Looking Horse, is very fascinating to tell you. As I told you, I belong to India, which is a land of divine motherly love, unity in living peace and harmony, unity in diversity and multiplicity. Over there, we had beautiful chance of coming together at India's inclusive temple, which is a multi-faith temple, inter-religious temple called Golden Temple. Next slide, please. In this Golden Temple in India, I met my relative. My relatives, Chief Arvol Looking Horse and Paul, are here, along with our friend Bridget Van Baren and my spiritual teacher, Shabda Khan, who is again a Universalist Sufi from San Francisco. We all met here in the Golden Temple, which was built by a Sufi master called Mia Mir Sai. But this Sufi, Mia Mir Sai, built this Golden Temple for the Sikh people. You know, he did not build this temple for his community, Muslims. He built this temple, he founded the stone of this temple for the Sikh turban-wearing Sikh people. You might have seen them. And in this temple, Golden Temple, Harmonious Temple, we met as our relatives. And from there, my journey starts. Next slide, please. And in this Living Water for All conference, this was my first opportunity to meet Bridget Van Baren, who made me young ambassador of her Living Peace. And then over here, I met Paula, and Paula just asked me to buy some cloths from Delhi and send to America for her relatives. And this became the reason how we started planning. I started planning to send some clothes for her, but then she said, "Why don't you come to America instead of sending clothes? And let's join our peace prayer, world peace prayer." And from there, I take a spiritual voyage to Mecca. Next slide, please. And I reach the mountain of Hira. This is the mountain where Prophet Muhammad got his revelation. And the first revelation that Prophet Muhammad attained was Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This is a beautiful prayer. In the name of Allah, the most merciful and the most compassionate, tenderly loving and infinitely compassionate, whose tenderly love and infinite compassion is just like the tenderly love and infinite compassion in womb of a mother. This is the revelation that Prophet Muhammad received in Makkah. Next slide, please. And I prayed in the same cave of Hira, which is called the cave of Hira, where Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, meditated. And after his meditation, he got revelation and enlightenment. And then from Makkah, Prophet Muhammad migrated, because they were a native tribe, indigenous tribe of Makkah, who were persecuted by the elite ruling class. And then they migrated to Medina. Next slide, please. This is the holy city of Medina, which is the most sacred site in Sufism, because this houses the holy grave of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And Medina tells us the story of how the native tribe of Prophet Muhammad migrated from Mecca to Medina. And in Medina, Prophet Muhammad established what we call mu'akhat, complete brotherhood between all the native tribes, all the indigenous tribes of both Mecca and Medina on the basis of what we call Mithaq Medina, the covenant of Medina. The covenant of Medina was the first ever written charter of human rights. It starts with the first clause says, Nahnu ummatun wahida, we all are one nation, we all are one people, we are all are one. So all nations, all faith traditions, and one prayer. This was first, this first found an echo in the holy city of Medina. Next slide, please. So in Sufism, it has attracted great number of people. Every year it attracts from all around the world, you see. And I paid this visit especially to the holy grave of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And then next slide, please. So then from Mecca and Medina to Mount Shasta, when I come here and I feel the message of unity in multiplicity, the message of harmony, living peace and harmony, has beautifully inspired me right from the holy mountain of Hira in Mecca to Medina to the holy mountain of Shasta. And I realize that the Holy Quran tells us, O people, O mankind, we have created you as Khalifa. Khalifa means the substitute of God on the planet Earth. And God says that I am tenderly love. The very first verse of the Quran says, Allah is tenderly love and infinite mercy and compassion. So as substitute of Allah on the earth, as substitute of the beloved creator on this mother earth, we all need to show the same tenderly love and infinite grace and compassion. That is the source of all creations. That is the source of all planet. And the Holy Quran says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, all praises due to the Lord, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, the most compassionate, the most gracious, Rabbil Alameen, Lord and sustainer, nourisher and protector of all the universe, of all the worlds, not just this world, all the worlds and all universe, be it planet Earth or Mercury or Venus. And as substitute of God, we have to show infinite love, care, compassion, tenderly love, and motherly love towards the Mother Earth. And with that, I wrap up and I reiterate and reinforce our commitment for living peace. That is, we all have to commit collectively and individually to work together to ensure a sustainable, healthy today and tomorrow by protecting the Mother Earth, honoring the sacred sites, soil, water, and all creations of the world. Water is life, water is love. Mini Vichoni, thank you very much.
Thank you, Razul, for your presentation. Our next presenter is a California native. She is the owner of Native Farms. Her name is Lindsay Renner. She traveled up from Humboldt. She's going to talk about food sovereignty, regenerative agriculture, and water conservation application for mitigating climate change.
Thank you for having me. It is such an honor to be here with all of you. So my name is Lindsay, and I'm the owner of Native Humboldt Farms. I'm a regenerative farmer. I've been cultivating for 15 years. I'm Wailaki. I'm enrolled in Round Valley Indian Tribes in Mendocino, California. But pre-1860, my tribe was actually native to Humboldt County. So the land that I cultivate on actually was a recreational area for my tribe pre-1860. And then after 1860, it belonged to my great-great-great-grandmother, Chow Roe. In 1859, during the gold rush, we were, my family, my relatives were rounded up and taken 10 miles east of where my farm is now, from their land to Fort Seward. The women and the children were separated from the men, and unfortunately, all of the male adults were killed. The women were enslaved and the children were put into re-education schools. Clearly, you know, like many, we lost our language, our culture. My grandmother's sister, my aunt, she actually lived into her the late 90s. And when she was 95, she decided to kind of start opening up and talking about the things that she recalled and that she had experienced to UC Berkeley and Humboldt State University. And so I was actually separated from my biological family when I was a baby. And 15 years ago, I bought Native Humboldt Farms. I was there for 3 years, and I found my biological family, my biological father, my grandparents, and they actually told me they knew exactly where I was. And they told me to walk down to the bottom of my property. And, you know, I walked down and they said, you know, up on a hill to the left, and you wouldn't know it was there unless you were led to it. And they said that there's a white picket fence, and there was, and there's a grave site, there's a gravestone, and there was. It's my great-great-grandmother, Chow Roe's daughter. She passed away when she was 2. That land, when my grandmother was a survivor, even though she was still going through everything, she did own that land. So without knowing it, I had been brought back to that land. And actually, I grew up not, I'm in an interesting situation because I didn't get to grow up with my family and with my culture at all. And I actually didn't get brought back into it until that moment. Sorry. Sorry. At that point in time, I realized I was brought back there for a purpose. At that point in time, I got into regenerative agriculture, and I really want to share kind of what I've learned about it with you all, and then kind of lead into how the outcome of regenerative agriculture is actually food sovereignty, and clearly, what an impact that can make and what a change that can make. So regenerative agriculture is this really amazing concept, right? Where you're basically working with nature, and it's not a new concept. It's a trendy kind of topic lately, but I actually refer to it as indigenous farming practices or indigenous agriculture, right? It's, pre-1860, it's what we did. It's, what my relatives, what my family did. It's what we've done for thousands of years. It's working with nature instead of against it. It's this full circle kind of closed loop regenerative cycle of working with the earth, right? And so, I'm nourishing the earth, and in return, she's giving me nourishment. So in regenerative agriculture, say for instance on my land, when I walked into it and I walked down onto it, I'm not thinking, what can I move? You know, what can I flatten out? What can I, you know, bring a piece of equipment in here and change to fit these crops? I'm walking down and I'm thinking, where will my crops fit into this natural habitat, into this natural ecosystem? And the idea is to preserve that natural habitat, that natural ecosystem, so that you can work with nature instead of against it. And, you know, oftentimes, you know, I think in recent years, people feel sometimes that they can do it better than nature, or that maybe nature didn't know. I don't know what's okay. Yeah, I think that sometimes, you know, in recent times, people think that they can do it better. You know, I have over 100 songbirds that visit my crops every year. They pick insects off and they take the insects back to their babies. I've left the natural habitat and ecosystem as preserved as possible so that, you know, the indigenous farmed oak grove is still there. The blackberries, the acre of blackberries are off to the side of the crops. And the pests and the pathogens and the caterpillars, you know, the caterpillars like the oak trees, and the pests, you know, tend to like the blackberries that have always been there, and so they gravitate away from my crops and onto them. You know, I also, so instead of, you know, I actually take native and natural plants from around the farm to create nutrients and to breed indigenous microorganisms to regenerate the soil and the earth itself. So say, for instance, I'll take the tips of the blackberries. Before they have berries, before they've flowered, they have a lot of nitrogen in them. You put that together with brown sugar that feeds the microorganisms, and then the organisms actually start to break down the plant material. In about a week, you have this liquid, and it's basically nitrogen. It's the nitrogen. So the microorganisms have done part of the work for you, and they've started to break down the nutrients. And then I introduce that nitrogen, and that very pure and natural nitrogen, and these microorganisms into the soil. And they start to create these little pathways for water to travel to make it easier for the roots to uptake. I'm doing part of the work. Nature's doing part of the work. You know, we're helping to regenerate the soil. The pathways actually help with water retention. So there's water conservation going on at that point in time. And then microorganisms in general, they're actually scientifically proven to uplift the spirit and improve your mood. It's like an antidepressant, a natural antidepressant. So when my hands are in the soil and I'm interacting with these indigenous microorganisms, it's lifting my spirit. And as you can see, it's really this full circle, just, you know, regenerative loop where you're working with nature and you're getting to know the earth again. And I'll be honest, you know, I mean, I was reading my aunt's recollection, the sights, the smells, you know, because it is documented in these California universities, and it was hard. And I went through all the emotions, and, you know, clearly I needed healing. And over the last 10 years, working with the earth, working with the soil, with my hands on the microorganisms, you know, and it really did help to heal me so much. I think the end result of regenerative agriculture is food sovereignty, which, you know, it's food sovereignty is something, we have all these issues going on in the world right now, and you know, food sovereignty is something that we can have at least a little bit of control of, you know. You know, there's pesticides. I don't have to use pesticides on my farm. I have a natural integrated pest management system, you know, because of that regenerative farming. So, you know, all of our food, it has pesticides, and kind of taking back control of the food sovereignty portion of all of this, I think is just a small step that we can all make. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be, acres and acres of crops. It can be one plant. It can be a plant in your backyard. You can start out small. It can be a community garden. And I just, that's what I've learned. That's what I think that I found that my message is for the people. And I just want to thank you again for having me. This is, it's such an honor to be a part of World Peace and Prayer Day and this entire week. And if anyone's interested in more information, definitely reach out. It's Native Humboldt, and I'd love to help and educate more and help with any community garden projects or anything like that. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsay, for sharing and for your presentation. Our next presenter is going to be Shane Orthoman from Minnesota. He is a Gothy artist, storyteller, and healer. He's here to share his cultural perspectives to the importance of traditional language. Ladies and gentlemen, Shane Orthoman.
No, it's really an honor to be here. I'm very humbled and happy to be here in front of this fire and be able to share something with you guys. And really, it's hard to describe myself, but I'm not anybody. I'm not anybody special. And I'm just, a member of settler society, a white man. My family came over 100 years ago in this country, like a lot of other people's families did. Some from hardship, some looking for a better life, and became part of that colonization process. And really what I came here to talk about today is that sickness of the mind that we've been talking about all weekend, and a lot of elders have spoken about in my people. And when it goes back to language, and I might talk more about that after my talk another time, is that if we knew ourselves, if white people knew ourselves, we would have behaved differently. If we knew ourselves, we would have been different people. And if we know ourselves in the future going forward, we can go from genocide to peaceful coexistence, to maybe even working together as one human race. And I think it's really important, especially for people from dominant society listening to me right now and tuning in online, is that if you're on the left or the right, you have a long way to go, but you can get there. You can get there. And it's really about taking off those hats that we wear, whether it's that, especially for progressive white people saying, well, I'm a good person, I'm a Democrat, I'm progressive, I'm a socialist, I'm an ally. How about just being a human being? And trying to live life as a good human being and taking responsibility for your relatives. How many progressives are there that have parents that say, well, my parents, they work in the mining industry. My father's a Republican governor. My parents own a car dealership. Well, you shouldn't be out in the streets trying to save indigenous people. You should be stopping your father from selling cars. You should be telling your father, who's a Republican governor, maybe he should step down from power. You got to speak truth to your own family, with your own people. And you need to get them acting right. And you need to look back at your background and say, wow, my great-grandfather was part of the destruction and the beginning of the destruction of this land. How can I heal that? What actions can I do in my lifetime to heal that? And this again goes to all those people tuning in and listening. The first action you can do is listen. Listen to the elders and people that have been speaking on this broadcast today. Listen to grassroots First Nations traditional people. That's where you have to start. Don't come in with a plan, a policy, a new way, a new religion, a new word for God. You can't make that up. You have to come in, you have to take all those hats off, you have to be humble, and you have to listen. And that's where it all starts. So with that, I was going to say, a little bit of how I got, where did my journey start? How did I get involved with, why am I here? How did I get involved with this family? And that's because my relationship relationship started in struggle. I think, again, like I said, for the people who want to decolonize themselves, decolonize their mind, you have to start that conversation in your family, and you have to be willing to take risks. You have to be willing to go out there, maybe get arrested, maybe lose your job because you say things that are unpopular. You have to be willing to get out there and take risks, and that's where I got involved with Nacha Arvol Looking Horse's Hunka father, Chris Leith, Shuakano Hitika. It was right here, taking off hats, right here at this protest. That was a sacred spring. Mini Oishni, Camp Coldwater, here in my own city. There's a few blocks from my house. When they put out the call, when the Mendota Midawakatan people put out the call for earth protectors, what we call today water protectors, to come out and stand up, I did. I missed some school, I got arrested, I did some things, but stood up. And I wouldn't be here except for that struggle and getting involved in the struggle. And this struggle was more than just protecting a sacred string. It was about treaty rights. It was about recognizing sacred sites. Now, this spring, thanks to the work of the Mendota Midawakatan unrecognized Dakota people, this spring and Pilot Knob are now a beautiful place where people can come and do ceremony. Thanks to them and their struggle. I was just one of those that came and helped out. So what I was talking about is that today we're facing humanity, human beings facing this crisis, right? We've lost faith in our original teachings. We've lost faith in the Mother Earth to take care of us. And we're being deceived, especially my people, and especially my people who think they're doing the right thing. Many, 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 many are being heavily, heavily deceived and are deceiving others. All right, next slide. All right, so I want to talk about some of the terms I'm using because we're on the internet and there's a lot of discussion today over what terms mean and what that's talking about. So I talk about whiteness. I'm talking about the reductionist identity of racial superiority created by the United States that various European identities were put into and forced to conform to, and that has been used as a system of privilege and power in this country, the settler society. When I'm talking about colonizer mentality, I'm talking specifically about the colonization process here on Turtle Island, which a lot of other speakers today have talked about in great detail. But it's that colonization between settler society and indigenous First Nation people here on Turtle Island. And when I'm talking about Christian conversion, I'll be talking about that a little bit. But again, I'm talking about that, some of that happened in Europe before our people came over. It was part of the colonizer mentality here. It's still very damaging here. It also happened there before people came over. So like I said, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for standing up for the water and be willing to make sacrifices, to get arrested and stand with the Mendota Midawakatan people. And that wasn't my first time standing up. I come from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I come from a mixed race family. Back in the 1990s, there was a group of racist skinheads trying to take over my neighborhood. And it's strange to me now to think how young I was. 13, 14 years old, I started going out with an anti-racist group of punk rockers and other people. And it really wasn't political. We were just fighting to keep our friends of color queer friends safe from neo-Nazis, and not the kind of neo-Nazis that post memes online and make dirty jokes. I'm talking about guys with tattoos on their faces, brass knuckles and knives, and eventually went to guns. Unfortunately, in the Midwest, standing up like that, we lost some people to the neo-Nazis. And they lost some people too. And in the end, after a couple years of fighting, I was only 16 years old, we made Minneapolis Nazi-free. What that meant was, this is way before they talk about deplatforming. Now corporate media uses deplatforming. Back then, deplatforming was really simple. You fly a Confederate flag, you fry a Nazi flag, we break your windows like that. That's how we handled the business then. That's what I'm talking about, confronting racism. When you talk about, there's a lot of university professors and people in HR positions working for billion-dollar corporations, writing books and getting rich. I'll tell you, they never took it in the teeth like I did. They haven't really stood up against racist gangs and said, no, you're not going to attack a black man and a white woman for walking down the street. No, you're not going to kill queer children in our neighborhood. No. These ideas that are now percolated up to the popular culture started right there in the street. And I'll tell you, confronting white supremacy back then was hard. I took beatings and I gave beatings, and I wasn't even a man. I was 13, 14, 15 years old. By the time we made our city Nazi-free, I was only 16 years old. So, you know, I don't have a big degree in sociology or a PhD, or didn't write a thesis on deconstructing white supremacy, but I deconstructed it in my own city with my own two hands. So it was after that that I got involved. When they started building, when they were going to build that road to destroy that spring, that's where I got involved in that. And when I was there, this was the first time the American Indian movement had ever stood with a non-native group. And the environmentalists that were there, we were part of an organization called Earth First. And it was the same rough and rowdy people like myself that had been standing up to those Nazis. And the American Indian movement liked us. They appreciated it. We had a no compromise attitude for Mother Earth. No compromise in defense of Mother Earth. No deal with power. It was the first time they had ever shared a spiritual camp with non-native people. And it was there that we lived under their laws with the sacred fire, sobriety, and the elders coming giving us teachings in the camp. And it was there that Chris Leith said to me, we need to talk, because your family and you do things in the Inipi, in the Sweat Lodge. And now it's something I had never told to anybody, because like I said, I'm part of dominant culture, dominant society, white settler society. A lot of things for all those European identities that got tossed into that whiteness. On my side, my family had a family way. What I came to find later in life, after my mom had her DNA tested, is a Sami way, a way to pray, and a way to live with our dreams, different things. When I was really young, I had problems with my dreams, and instead of a lot of my peers, instead of getting put into the pharmaceutical mental health situation, my mom said, "Oh, you got to talk with your aunt. She knows about things your grandmother did." So they helped me out and taught me how to be an actor in my dreams and to understand dreams of power, dreams of prophecy, dreams of fantasy, and taught me how to pray. And that's what Chris Leith saw when I was in that lodge. And he said to me, he said, you need to share, you need to talk about these ways, you need to share these ways. You need to bring your color back to their sacred and original teachings. Next slide. And the work I do in the community is not only with Sami people. That's a major part of my identity. Godi is a word from Alsatru, talking about someone who's recognized in their community as that spiritual person. And I work with all types of white people. And just like when I was a young man, say, changing their minds one punch at a time, now we're changing hearts one ceremony at a time. And that's not to say I've been absent. I've been there every time. I was there I stood up and marched at the George Floyd uprising. Every time the communities needed defense, the communities needed people to stand up in a good way, I've always been there. I've always stood up alongside people of color, alongside First Nations, alongside all those in need, all those being oppressed. So the majority of my work, like I said, is done with people of all the different backgrounds that are thrown into whiteness. Whiteness cut us off from our original understanding of time and existence. Whiteness put us into a box that was thrown on top of all the other boxes and is continually pushing down. But the people inside that iron box, it's like a jail cell, it's like a prison. And the displacement that we experience is continuous. What's funny is that even a lot of very wealthy, materially successful white people are still spiritually extremely poor, if not dead. Because for a white person, if you go out and get an education, it's not to help your people, it's to help yourself. And if you graduate as a lawyer, if you graduate as a doctor, if you graduate as a poli-sci, well, you just go to any old city in any part of the country that needs that, and you jump right in. For example, in Minneapolis during the George Floyd uprising, the mayor of Minneapolis had only been living in Minneapolis for 4 years before he became mayor. Because you can be a mayor anywhere, right? You don't need to know the people. You don't need to love the people. You don't need to know the land. You don't need to understand anything. So there's this continuous displacement and continuous cut off from source, cut off from self and understanding. And what that does is allows you to be deceived into believing many different things and into committing acts of great evil, both upon yourself and upon other people. And you look at what's interesting today is that one of the fastest rising suicide rates is in white men between ages of 30 and 40. We're doing great evil in the world and great evil to ourselves. The evil that's inflicted outward is inflicted inward. And so deconstructing this whiteness is bringing people, like I said, it's taking off those hats, those airs, those titles, those things, the lawyer, the doctor, the evangelical, this that brings us down to our humanity. And it's only then, when we stripped all that away, that we can be who we truly are. And I guess I'm going to leave it there. I guess I'll probably come back and speak again when we're not on the time, and I can talk about a little more things that was up there. But I have a lot to share, and even a lot to share about the root meaning of our language. That if we understood it, the genocide and the horror that has existed between our peoples would not be where it is. And once my people can understand who we truly are, that's when we'll truly exist as one people and one humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane, for that presentation. Our next guest speaker, her name is Colleen Silk. She is a spiritual leader and tribal chief for the Winnemucca tribe. She's here to share a little bit more about her project on revitalization of salmon and working with the people of New Zealand. So, ladies and gentlemen, Colleen Sisk.
Sisk. Yeah. Hestam Talit. Okowen Elohim. Buyum Puyok Okowen Elohim Purum. Chalama Purum. I ask that our sacred Mount Shasta look over us and help us settle our hearts and to think of the good things as we go through these days. So my whole family is born and raised here. And we are, our story of our genesis comes from Buyum Puyuk, and that our commitment and our duty is to take care of the watershed down from where we were first brought into the world. And so that's kind of what we've been doing all these years. Not so long ago, the Panther Meadows Spring, which is the doorway into the Milky Way for us coming and going, that dried up. And we started looking around at other countries, because my grams always said, there's 20 sacred mountains that keep our world together. They hold Mother Earth together by the oceans inside, and they help us understand these things. And so we reached out to other countries to find out what's happening with their mountain waters, what's going on, because those mountains are talking, those mountains are sending messages. And the Altaians from Uchebek came and they said, come over and get some water from our lake and you can bring it back to our sister mountain and help out like that. And so we also reached out to Iraqi in Mauna Kea and several different places to find out what's going on with the water. Anybody else notice what's going on with the water, because these high mountain springs are drying up. These are artesian springs. They're not run by rain. They come from the volcanic heart of the earth. And the oldest water in the world comes up, pushes up through the land like that. And this is what keeps the people healthy and on the right track. So we did that, and we are still trying to follow that way. But we take our direction from the prayers. And the prayers had led us to a war dance on Shasta Dam, because that's the weapon of mass destruction here in California. And in doing that dance, we found out that our salmon that have been blocked by that dam since the 1940s was sent to New Zealand. And in New Zealand, they're thriving. And as soon as we did that, New Zealand let us know that if we wanted our salmon back, they were there. So we did that. We went to New Zealand and we danced for those salmon, and we're still working on that after 20 years on this prayer. And at this point in time, we have now one of the obstructions is that we're not a, quote, federally recognized tribe. And here in America, it means something. It means you're less than. It means you don't have rights. It means you can't even hold ceremony, because it's really against the law, because you're not Indians. But we've never let that get in our way. My grandma said we were here before those laws, and her mother was here during the law that said that they could kill Indians. And that was a bad law too. And so this unrecognition issue, it's a bad process for all Indian people. And it's a divider of peace and healing amongst the indigenous peoples of this land right here. I have a lot of relatives who are federally recognized right here. But my village and my people are not. We're not federally recognized, but we fight against the government to do the right thing, because when we bring the salmon back to these rivers, and this Clear Creek right here before Whiskeytown had lots of salmon in it. Lots of salmon would run up this because we fished here after we couldn't fish on our river. But those fish are the health keepers of the river. They dig those nests 1.5 foot in the gravel. That lets out all of the sediments that go down. The ocean needs that sediment. And they lay their eggs in that gravel. And then they come back to that same place. Just like us, we're supposed to come back to our own place. We're taking care of our own place. That's what we are charged with, taking care of our rivers and our places that Creator put down for us to do that. Gave us songs, gave us dances, gave us a way to pray to the sacred fire and the star people. That was left for us. And so we're under a great strain of colonization, and it's very difficult to keep going because, one, we're a small tribe. We're like maybe 126 people. But we were left the sacred fire by my Grams, who comes from a line of unbroken line of leaders. Her mother and her father were leaders before that who came through the settling of the state of California and lived through the extermination, genocide policies. And we're the people who are carrying on from that point. And so we've been working on the salmon to get them back. And now we have kind of knocked on the door of the California Department of Fish and Game for the last 20 years. Finally, they've opened that door last year. And so last year was the first year that we were able to work with them in putting back winter run salmon on the McCloud River on Winnemem, Waiwakit. We put back 40,000 eggs on that river, but only retrieved 1,600 that went to the Sacramento River. So we still have to work to build a volitional passage around that dam so that they can swim in and out. And we also have to find a way to get our salmon back from New Zealand, because they still swim wild in New Zealand waters. They still go up. They're still the mountain climbers. That our valley fish here are no longer mountain climbers. And they have to be able to climb 5,000 feet up these mountains to get into the waters like McCloud River. And so we have a project that we're working on, and I have a very short video, and maybe you could play that video now. Yeah?
Up Jonathan, all the boy now.
We're going to the lake. We're asking that the river receive these eggs. Food is a hide egg. And so we're asking that in an old-time way, that it continues to grow in that way. And we put down that song so they have a fighting chance.
The salmon have not been above the dam since the dam was installed. And so today, it's a historic moment. It's a historic day because salmon eggs are going to be brought for the first time in over almost 80 years. And it's important that we receive them in a good way, so we're here to pray for them. We're here to ceremony with them. We know it's not ideal. You know, it's not the New Zealand salmon yet, but it's a step in the right direction.
Our prayer here goes along with our run for salmon that we've been doing for 7 years. That prayer came down from the mountains for us to wake people up and to bring them back on the trail for the salmon return, because they are ultimately responsible for the conditions of our water. They're the only ones that bring the nutrients from the ocean up to these mountains, up to these bears, eagles, wolves, coyotes, you know, everything that uses them, including the people that were here. And we all did our jobs because, you know, they all die after they spawn. And if we didn't do our jobs here, there would be a river full of dead fish. And so we all work together in that cycle of life.
Hold on to the cup. We'll stand right here.
We're doing Run for Salmon again this year. We start on July the 7th on Mount Shasta, and we'll go to the ocean. And so anybody who would like to follow that run or become a part of that run, you'll see the, was that over? I'm still talking. Oh, that's me. Okay. I thought the video wasn't over. You guys are funny. Anyway, you can follow the Run for Salmon, become a part of it. Our aim is to wake up the world to what's happening with our waters, to climate change, to things that need to return to the nature, and everything that we could do to do that. We should be in those rooms. We should be standing up for all the things that need to happen. You know, we're at the UN. We're asking for a way to decolonize our way of life. You know, even the act of signing up for federal recognition is colonization. And so for us to remain indigenous and sovereign, we really can't sign up under that process of recognition. So maybe we will never, ever be recognized, but so be it. The other thing is that at the UN, all the indigenous peoples around the world need to have a voice and a position of getting into the rooms where other governments are. We are governments. We're taking care of places that affect all of the world. You know, my people are charged with taking care of Mount Shasta. We do the prayers all the time there. We do the dances there. We go and we hold ceremonies so other people can also belong to that mountain, because it is connected to 20 sacred mountains around the world. And that's a big responsibility for the people to keep connected like that. And that's our job. You know, it's difficult for people because we're not really good communicators. We're really not good at what we should be, because we went to school, we went to church, we went to, you know, the army, the service, we went everywhere. And we picked up this stuff, and we haven't been able to put it down. And for us to have world peace, we got to start with indigenous peoples and give each other peace and each other equal rights to exist, to continue to exist, you know. And that hasn't been done because of colonization in the way that it should be. But we are fighting at the UN level. We have filed shadow reports against the United States, against that are opposed to keeping us from our right to ceremony. Just because we're not on that BIA list, we are still on our river. We are still doing what we were put here to do. And we have a right to continue that. And so in this video you saw, we had the little children come down and put those eggs in, those little baby salmon. Those were eyed eggs. and they have something in common that needs to be grown up again. They have to grow up in that again, and we have to give that back to our children. We have to make sure that they have that kind of experience to be connected to the waters, to the salmon that are in our river now. From last year, like I say, we delivered 1,600 to the Sacramento River, but our belief is that they were going to be in the river a long time after that. And this summer, a couple of the fishermen have already caught salmon that are like 5 and 6 inches long. And so we know they're still in the river, and we still need to get them to the Sacramento River. And we have a whole team of people who are going to try to work on that and accomplish that, because salmon, whatever happens to salmon, happens to us. You know, our story says that salmon gave us the voice. When we came out of that spring and we were the last one to choose a physical form, we couldn't speak. And so the Creator called back the mountain spirit and the fire spirit and the water spirit to help us. Gave us that fire, gave us that water, gave us the mountain to help take care of us. And the salmon heard about it, and he came back. And salmon offered the voice for us to be able to, the human, to be able to communicate. And that's what we're so terrible at, is communicating. And so I appreciate all of the things that Arvol Looking Horse and Paula and all this group have done over the years and time, because you know, it takes a lot of time and a lot of our lifetime to pull things together like this. So thank you, Arvol, for taking care of that and including us in this way of life. And thank you, Redding Rancheria, for all of this to help us out. So thank you very much. Ho, wana, chalabim, wintutina sing ting.
Up next, we have a few short videos, and after these videos, we're going to have a closing statement from Chief Arvol Looking Horse, followed by a quick presentation of one of his documentaries that he is working on. So, yep, we are going to show those videos.
The concept of genetically engineered trees was to have trees do things that they can't do in nature. For example, you know, trees that have the ability to kill insects. Right now, there's a pending proposal that would be the first GMO plant ever, in this case, a genetically engineered tree, that would be allowed to be released into wild forests, directly into wild forests, with the intent of contaminating its native wild relatives.
This isn't science fiction. There are currently hundreds, perhaps thousands of test plots of GE trees already being grown in the open around the world. My name is David Suzuki. I am, by training and profession, a geneticist. We study the genetics of organisms by breeding a male and a female of one species, looking at their offspring and breeding them through what is called vertical inheritance within a species. When you take a gene from one species and transfer that DNA into a totally unrelated species, that's a completely different kind of experiment. This is now called horizontal inheritance. We've never done that before, and it is absolutely bad science to say that we can look at vertical inheritance and use the same ideas to explain what goes on in horizontal experiments. It's just lousy science.
Genetically engineered trees, a lot of our people say there's really no life to that tree. There's no spirit to that tree. It's already been corrupted.
You are going to inject genes that are not part of nature. It's not how nature has developed itself. You're interfering in nature. You're going beyond a limit, and that's what I think is a very serious thing in GE trees, and we don't know what will happen. We don't know about the risks. So we are playing with nature, and that's unacceptable.
But with genetically modified organisms, such as trees, you cannot retract them. Once they are out there, Where are you going to find them if they have gone into the forest? Where are you going to find them if they have spilled down the river and gone to the neighboring country?
What the hell is the rush to apply these ideas that we're getting? We're still at the bare beginning of understanding of what we're doing. The rush to apply these ideas is absolutely dangerous because we don't have a clue what the long-term impact of our manipulations is going to be.
Loving greetings to all. I'm really glad and delighted that the Living Water for All is having its World Peace Prayer Day for justice and happiness of all. In this sacred precincts of the Baha'i Lotus Temple, I greet all of you on this occasion when we are concerned about the plight of humanity and particularly focusing on water. As Baha'u'llah has said, the Sun of Truth is the word of God upon which depends the education of those who are endowed with the power of understanding and utterance. It is the true spirit and heavenly water through whose aid and gracious providence all things have been and will be quickened. I'm very delighted that our Chief Arvol Looking Horse has written a very beautiful message, and I'm also grateful to Bridget Van Baren for the Living Water for All project, which has brought us together on several occasions to think about world peace, security, and happiness of all. Water is most sacred, and just as the water of life nourishes our souls, the water that we drink lifts our body and gives us nutrition and health. Thank you very much.
Dearest grandmother and grandfather, indigenous elders, dear Chief Arvol Looking Horse and Paula Looking Horse, other distinguished elders, my fellow sentient beings, we send all our love and blessings for this beautiful gathering on Mount Shasta, invoking the universality of human ideals to manifest loving kindness and compassion as a remedy for all of the world's problems. The elements, earth, water, fire, and air, they are the very fabric of our being. They're the fabric of our planet. We recognize that, and we recognize that the current state of affairs, both ecologically and politically, it's an imperative that we nurture and care for each other, for the land, for the water, for the air, for the mountains, for the rivers and oceans, the trees and the plants, for the four-leggeds and the two-leggeds. We are fully with you in spirit. Aho Mitakuyasin.
Every day, it's a very sacred day. We have heard many, and there's a lot more that are testifying what is happening in their territory, different parts of the world. But we know that, like the old ones say, that if only the rivers and the creeks and the mountains can talk. We know that all of us have to maintain and take care of it. As we speak about the sacred sites, and the mountains, the old ones say that we don't own it. We take care of it. Help us take care of our sacred sites. I know that there's many prayers are being done in these 4 days, and tomorrow's the 25th. But here at the Western Door, Mount Shasta, 2023, World Peace and Prayer Day. We know in our hearts, in our minds, as we stand with all nations, we know that Mother Earth, from the satellite view, you look down. Long ago, our ancestors never had satellites, but they know that Mother Earth is a living spirit. And today, we say that Mother Earth is sick and has a fever. We know that as we pray, we need to think about all the people that have done us wrong, to pray for them. Because we need to respect each other as we stand that circle of life, Shanglesh Kawaka. That this way of life is no ending, no beginning. So as we look down upon the earth, a new child is born, the heartbeat of Mother Earth. We know that there's always a new beginning as we mold our way of life as leaders of our spiritual beings. We know that all of us have a lot of duties and responsibilities we still have to do yet for the coming days and years. May peace be with each and every one of you. Aho, metakuask.
Concept of genetically engineered trees was to have trees do things that they can't do in nature. For example, trees that have the ability to kill insects. Right now, there's a
Looking Horse's projects that he's working on called One Prayer. It elaborates more on the history and tradition of World Peace and Prayer Day, and yeah. Oh, and after the trailer, we're going to do an open mic for anyone that would like to share a few words, and also dinners at 5 underneath the tent. So I hope you enjoy this trailer, and thank you to everyone that has came today. So there we go.
Makaka cha utefika hechawa le chanupawa waka cha he ukahipi. Naha he shakoi hina wacheke ucheta ha hochoka hina ucheta ahipi. Hep the Sami ati hena uchake na ha.
Allied air forces began an attack on military targets
the war
in Iraq.
goes to start, disasters in the region will take place.
The hurricane is located about 40 miles due east of Miami.
This is total
Still dark
devastation.
outside
When the earthquake struck, destruction everywhere.
All of this is connected.
Heche pte hinchla on sancha makakan heche ake kinajikte.
Among Native Americans, a sacred story has been passed down for generations about a holy woman who taught them to pray and promised them prophecy at the birth of a white buffalo.
Rare living symbol of unity and understanding.
Only 1 in 10 million buffalo are white.
An animal rich in the lore of Native Americans and sacred to many tribes.
It's a sign of change to the world.
My name is Chief Arvol Looking Horse, 19th generation keeper of the sacred pipe, Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, Sioux Nation.
Arvol, as the 19th generation keeper of the sacred pipe, he is to us what the Pope is to the Catholic people. He is to us what the Dalai Lama is to the Tibetan people, what Muhammad is to the Muslim people. What his entire life is committed to is caring for the pipe, the intent of the pipe, and as the spiritual keeper of those sacred rites and ceremonies that were brought to us by the white buffalo calf woman.
Many nations have sacred objects. For us, the sacred pipe is the center of our nation, was a tool for us to pray with to the Great Spirit. When I was 12 years old, my grandmother on her deathbed, she said, my grandchild is going to be the keeper of the sacred pipe. But if the people don't straighten up, that you will be the last bundle keeper. As a young boy, I thought I knew a lot. I was going to high school and living with my father and my mother. They were both bronc riders. And my mother, she breaks horses. My father, he was a bareback rider, going to rodeos. I want to be one of those guys. I want to sing at a powwow and rodeo like everybody else. So I did eventually join the rodeos in our community and our reservations. But I was scared of horses. So. I rode Great Plains, SDRA, South Dakota rodeos. It took me a while, but eventually I got into professional rodeo. And that was my goal, to ride with the top cowboys of the world. I was rodeoing like 36 to 38 rodeos a year. I just had a feeling that something was going to happen. I got on a horse, and when they opened that gate, that horse went straight up in the air and it took a flip backwards and came up top of me, and then both my knees, I can just still feel that. And that's all I remember. They took me to the hospital. And the doctor said that, he's paralyzed neck on down. It was a matter of time. And I was helpless. I cried in my heart. I saw my relatives the next morning at daybreak. I knew they were standing there waiting for me. That phone rang and they held that phone to my ear. I knew that it was the spirit grandmother, the white buffalo calf woman. And she told me, well, you did this to yourself. You're supposed to be helping the people. The grandmother really chewed me out and said, we're going to give your life back. There's a hard time coming. And now you're going to stand with the people. You're going to walk. Within 4 days, I got my feelings back. It was so beautiful just to walk. And I told myself I'm going to give thanks all the time from here on. They gave my life back to help the people. I don't care if it's a small group of people or thousands of people. I'm going to pray for world peace and global healing. grew up in a very short time here. And now I am a world leader carrying the message of the white buffalo. The prophecy of mending the sacred hoop. Stand together. That sacred hoop of the nation was broken at Wounded Knee. We have a long history of war over protecting our territory. Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse. Everything started after Little Bighorn. We signed a treaty with the U.S. government over 100 years ago. It was broken at Wounded Knee, 1890. Bigfoot is my great-great-grandfather. We're survivors of Holocaust, massacres, in the name of progress. Put our people on concentration camps. It's called a reservation, but back then it was a concentration camp. The military came and took our children, 5, 6 years old. If you don't let go of your children, you shot your children right in your arms. So much abuse. We rode horseback from the 80s till 1990. We did a ceremony, and we prayed that there would be no more wounded knees throughout the world. But the way things are going and the things that we are doing right now, well, it's not that way. Mother Earth, she has a fever. Man has gone too far. Disrespect everything. Sacred sites been destroyed. Eagles are flying into trash pits. When I go outside our community into the world, this is a strange world that can't succeed. But right now at home, the Native American people, they're gathering to stand up to stop the pipeline. The elders talk about the black snake, where the black snake will be going on top of the earth, and that's when we'll be faced with global disaster. The Native American people believe that the black snake is the pipeline. We have come to a time and a place of great urgency. Even scientists are saying that we are at the point of no return. People are so spiritually disconnected. We need to reconnect with spirit. Mother Earth is the spirit. Mother Earth is the source of life, not a resource. We are at the crossroads. But there is hope. I have been campaigning to United Nations to declare June 21st as World Peace and Prayer Day, or Honor Sacred Sites Day. Sacred sites all over the world must be protected. On June 21st, we're asking people all over the world to pray with us. We can create an energy shift, and that's what needs to happen to heal Mother Earth. 1994, the first white buffalo was born. It was like a needle in a haystack. A message to the world. We need to heal together, survive together, come together. There's no one person higher than the other. There's no one nation higher than the other. We are at the crossroads, either be faced with chaos, disasters, tears from our relatives' eyes, or we can unite spiritually. All nations, all faiths, one prayer.